Hello and welcome to the United Views 12 Greats of Christmas. I'm Ben from at the Reds United, and today we're going to be celebrating and talking about the legend that is George Best. Now, before we talk more about Bestie, let's introduce you to our panel. On our panel today, we have got the Irish Red. Thank you very much for coming on, Niall.
No problem, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. And also on the show today, when he goes and he leaves the show, I'm going to say ta-ra Pete, because you may know his banner as ta-ra Fergie. Pete Molyneux, thank you for coming on the show, mate.
My pleasure, Ben.
And I'm not going to say ta-ra just yet. We want some knowledge out of you first.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good.
Now, quickly, just a bit about George Best, if you don't know him, which hopefully most Reds you will do. At the age of 15, George Best was scouted by Manchester United. The scout guy at the time, Bob Bishop, sent a telegram to Sir Matt Busby saying, "I think I found you a genius," and boy was he right. George Best made his first team debut at the age of 17 and made his way into United history books and gained his legendary status by spending 11 brilliant years at the club. He was a massive character, to say the least. He didn't just do his talking on the pitch, but off it too. Now, a few facts about George Best. He played 474 games for United. That's in all competitions. He won the FA Youth Cup, the Football First Division twice, the Charity Shield twice, and the European Cup. In terms of Premier League appearances or First Division appearances for United, he made 361, scoring 137 goals. Now, we're going to go to the panel in just a moment for the George Best memories. But before we do, let's have three of our own as we do in every 12 Greats of Christmas special. And we'll start with memory number one. Now, guys, in 1968, Best won the Ballon d'Or, which meant that he'd won three major honours at the age of just 22, still quite early on in his United career. So, Pete, we'll come to you first. From his early days as a United fan as you are and watching him, could you tell he was going to be a superstar?
Oh, definitely, Ben. I was fortunate enough to start watching United just after they won the Cup in '63. But my dad wouldn't take me to the first team matches because I was only small and the crowds were massive. So he took me to the Youth Cup matches. And that season, '63-'64, Best starred amongst a very good Youth Cup side, very similar to the class of '92, with Sadler and Rimmer and Aston and Anderson, etc., Fitzpatrick. But Best stood out, and he stood out because of his pure footballing ability, mainly his ability to dribble. He was absolutely mesmerising, and we've seen great dribblers at Old Trafford there since then. But Georgie Best just ran along as if he had the ball tied to his boot. And he just did things. He'd done things before other footballers even thought of doing them, you know. And he used to light up my life when I was 11 at those Youth Cup matches in the evening at Old Trafford. And I just fell in love with him as much as a man can fall in love with another man.
Amazing.
And be straight.
Yeah, he just sounds like a phenomenal football player, as of course he was. Now, Noel, he played with Law and Charlton, of course. How would you rate him with them two brilliant footballers?
Oh God, it's a tough one to call, but for me, as Pete said, you know, the ball was like glued to his feet. One of the most sensational. I know I like to make sort of references between you know, modern players now to sort of give a picture to the sort of younger generation that will be watching this show. But Cantona and Giggs would be something, a cross between both of them. His passing as well. A guy who had just such genius. I remember, you know, looking back and watching some of the goals there today, this afternoon. The goal against Spurs, it was esque of the goal that Cantona scored against Liverpool in the FA Cup final. Just the control, the touch. You know, he had everything as a footballer, not just the dribbling, which was fantastic, but the guile and touch and precision. You know, he had it all really. He had the world at his feet, and I don't think it's fair really to compare any of the three guys. So I'm not going to.
Well, you've mentioned
they were all special in their own way.
Yeah, of course, and we'll be doing shows on all of them as well during the 12 Greats of Christmas, which is just brilliant. Now, you both kind of just mentioned his technical ability, and that's my memory too. I don't want to point out one goal, one run. I want to just talk about him in general, his technical ability. The goals he scored usually after those crazy, mazy runs, you know, you hear about them all the time. Pete, talk us through George Best as a footballer, from taking the ball on his chest to his feet to eyeing up a defender to scoring a goal.
Yeah, he's as Niall said, he is renowned for dribbling, as I mentioned as well earlier. But Georgie Best could head great goals. He could shoot from 20 odd yards, 30 yards. The goals he made for Law and Charlton and Hurd and Kennelly and the rest. With George Best in your team, you always felt you could win in every game, and certainly any game, you know. But you know, the one thing that often doesn't get talked about George Best was he was a slight Irish lad. Always was when he played in the red shirt right from his younger years. But his bravery was tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are the days when Norman Hunter, Peter Storey, Ron Harris, Mike Doyle, they would cut you off at the waist. When Rooney got sent off against West Ham this season, that wouldn't have been a foul. When Bestie was playing, you know, you'd have just dusted yourself down and got on with it. George Best always got up and played on, and not just played on, but he'd then go and dance around you. He had tremendous bravery, and I think all through his life. And for me, he is the best player I've ever seen, and it's not just nostalgia that, because I've been blessed to see great players since. But he stood out. The things he did was so special and magical, and they stayed magical. And it's just a pity now that there is only a dozen or so goals that are on video or YouTube, etc. Those are his best goals, possibly. And he didn't score goals like that every week, but he scored stacks of very, very good goals that weren't caught on tape. You know, great player, my all-time hero. God bless him.
Wow. I mean, what can we say to follow that? No, I mean, I was going to say, you've heard obviously the whole technical bit. You've heard Pete talk about Best there as a footballer, but I just want to quickly come to you now and just quickly talk about him being the complete footballer. Now, obviously, Pete says his hero, his idol. You know, also his best footballer he's seen. But in terms of that mentality, that ability, and the goals, do you feel that Best in the 60s was the complete footballer?
Yeah, simple as, yeah, he'd everything, as Pete mentioned. From what the clips I've seen of the guy, you know, he, as I mentioned there at the start, you know, it wasn't just all about his dribbling technique. He had the guile to finish as well. He saw passes other players wouldn't see. The guy was just a genius. And the one thing that Pete mentioned there again was he get chopped down in some of the clips of him, but he get back up. And I think that's the way he lived his life, even the off the field problems that he had. He battled right to the end, and you know, it was a pleasure. Actually, another story. I met him actually when I was about 8 years of age, queued up and met him, and he was just a gentle soul. He was a very friendly guy. You know, I was 8 years old. He sat me up in his lap, and just a great character for all the troubles his life had. I think, you know, what we saw on the pitch, it translated to what kind of character he was off the pitch.
I mean,
and here's the book for proof. I got it signed.
Look at it. There's a piece
it's one of my all-time favorites. So there we go. It's right beside me the whole time. And no, just in general, you know, these guys come along once in a lifetime at a football club. We're lucky enough to have a number of them. But for me, from what I've seen of him, you know, he definitely sticks out for me as the greatest player to ever play for Manchester United Football Club.
Now, obviously, you guys have your own memories of George Best. So I want to come to you about individual games, goals, and just your overall memories of Best in just a second. But before we do, people nowadays, you go through social networking and you see George Best quotes. So we've already said how he was a larger-than-life character. We've already said how great a footballer he was. So I thought, why not add some George Best humour to the show? And let's get out some of Bestie's quotes. Now, I read this one, and I'll come to you, Noel, first. If you'd given me the choice of going out and beating 4 men before smashing in a goal from 30 yards against Liverpool, or going to bed with Miss World, it would have been a difficult choice. Luckily, I have done both. Now, that doesn't just sum him up, does he? That he enjoyed life off the pitch, but he still hated the Scousers, Noel.
Yeah, sure. Who doesn't? Yeah, no, just that was the type of guy he was, as I mentioned. Loved the high life off the pitch, the activities that came with it. Was sort of a poster boy. He was the trend for what footballers have become. Household names, pin-ups, and that's sort of the way he's lived his life here. Sorry, my phone is actually ringing here. My schoolboy error, but he lived his life that way, on the pitch and off the pitch. But when I met him that time in Dublin, he had a bottle of bubbly with a smile on his face, and it just happens like that. It was a tough time for him being the first sort of pin-up guy, but just always had a smile on his face, and really a guy I remember very fondly.
So he was a lovely character. He was a brilliant footballer, and I mean, these quotes just keep on coming. Pete, I've got one for you. He also said, "When I'm gone, people will forget all the rubbish. Will forget all of the rubbish, and will remember me for the football." Do you feel that's the case, Pete? Will people remember the brilliant George Best because of his football?
I think anybody that saw him play will, Ben. I remember him making that quote towards the end, that he did hope people would remember him for his football. Yes, anyone that saw Georgie Best play will remember him for his football. All the stuff off the field is like froth on the coffee. But any United fan that watched him through the 60s and the early 70s will remember what he did for the team, and the great goals, the great moments, yes. And I think people that have come to be aware of George Best since, and only see the clips, and if they get under the surface a little bit and beyond the drinking, will know that he was a great, great footballer. Because these things don't last if there wasn't some substance to them,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he will be remembered for his football. I think it's 9 years on since the great man passed away, and he is remembered for his football. And there was a bit of graffiti in Salford in the 60s, and it's often misquoted now, but it did say, "Eusebio great, Pelé better, George Best." And
And it doesn't read wrong. No,
it applies today as it did then.
Wrong.
Certainly
Now,
doesn't.
he was a legend. We all know that. You guys know your best stuff. You've proved that already. However, we'll see how you get on in the best quiz in just a little while. Before we do, I just want to have your own memories about George Best. Certain goals, certain games. What you remember from the great man. So now we'll start with you. Apart from the time you've met him, what's your best memories?
I think now, obviously looking back over, doing some more, just relaying my mind of what I've seen, and one of the goals that sticks out for me is the goal against Spurs. But one moment where he actually wasn't a United player, I'm going to say, I think it was the goal against San Jose Earthquakes when he was playing with them. That was one of the most beautiful goals you'll ever see. He just showed a little bit of everything that was about George Best: the dribbling technique, the movement of the body, the skill, and ultimately the finish. And that memorable goal, I believe it was against Fulham, Pete, where he grabbed the post afterwards. Is that correct? Was it Fulham that memorable goal as well?
There was one against Fulham, yeah. Northampton he did as well.
I think it's the Northampton one. Yeah, I think that's the goal. That was a fantastic goal, and it just sort of summed up George Best of what kind of player he was. The goal against San Jose as well. It was just something that it had a little bit of everything of what George Best was about. So I'd recommend anyone who hasn't seen the goal to go Google it and have a look, because that was George at his very best.
It was
no pun intended.
One of the best. Hey, there's another pun. Pete, let's come over to you. Your George Best memories, please.
Georgie Best memories. Taking Manchester City's youth team apart in 63-64 And I think it was something like 25,000 at the final after that against Swindon. We won 4-1 in the second leg, and he starred that night. But then when he got into the first team, I was lucky enough, Ben. My dad took me as a 13-year-old to that European Cup final in '68. And Best had a field day. It was made for him. And when he scored that goal 2 minutes into extra time, it was superb. And that typical George Best, he danced round the Benfica goalie and plonked the ball in the net. And it just, we knew then that we were going to win the European Cup, first English team to win it. So the goal at Wembley in '68, I was also lucky enough to be at Northampton when he got those 6 goals. 6 goals. He came back from being suspended for a month. And there was talk of, well, should George Best be back in the team? Because he was starting to get his bad boy image. And the press were having a go. I said, well, they've got Law and Kidd and Charlton. Who needs Georgie Best? And he played, and we won 8-2, and he scored 6. just to remind people of the pecking order in life, And then finally, Ben, he scored 1 against Chelsea in the League Cup in 1970. I think it's on YouTube. He danced round most of the Chelsea defence, and then Chopper Harris came across, took him waist high. He carried on with the ball. Harris fell over. He danced round Bonetti. He put it in the net, and he went on his knees at the Stretford end. And I could have died at that moment and been the happiest fella in the world, And the Stretford end went absolutely balmy, and we beat them 2-1. And it was just such a special moment and a great goal and a great atmosphere at the Stretford end. Perfect. So 3 there for the price of 1.
Cheers. Thank you, Pete. And thank you, Noel, for your memories. Remember, guys, if you have any George Best memories, today is the best day leading up to Christmas. It is George Best Day on our Twitter, @TheUnitedView. Send us a tweet of your memories throughout the day. We'll retweet you. We'll share some more memories with you as well throughout the day. It's all about George Best today in the 12 greats of Christmas at the United View. Make sure you subscribe as well. But it's time for our quiz. Every great are going to have a quiz. We're going to do it with every panel. So, guys, you've got a pen and paper, yeah?
Yep.
Brilliant. So what we're going to do a quick George Best quiz, and we'll see who's the best after this quiz. Right, so if you're playing along at home, get your pens and papers at the ready. And let's start with question number 1 in the George Best quiz. Playing for pride and pride only. In which competition did Best score 6 goals against the opposition team? Pete kind of hinted onto it there. But in which competition did Best score 6 goals against the opposition team? That's question number 1. Moving on to question number 2. Best beat which fellow United teammate to the Ballon d'Or in 1968? Best beat which fellow United teammate to the Ballon d'Or in 1968? That's question number 2. Moving on to question number 3. Which club did Best join after United? And I'm looking for the official club, not on loan. So which club did Best join after United? And I'm not talking about on loan because there were a couple. I'm talking about officially. Question number 4. By the way, that question number 3 isn't a trick question. It is the official club he joined after United. Question number 4. Who was we playing in the European Cup final the year that Best won it? In question number 4. Who were we playing in the European Cup final in the year that Best won the trophy? And our final question in our Best Pub quiz, question number 5. Why did George Best wear the number 9 shirt just once? Why did George Best wear the number 9 shirt just once? That could sort of be a trick question if you wanted it to be, but it's also quite logical and simple. Why did George Best wear the number 9 shirt just once? That's question number 5. Right, if you're playing along at home and you're playing against somebody and you don't want to know the answers yet, pause us right here because it's time to go through the answers with Pete and Noel. Let's see who's the best at Best. And the best somewhere in there. Right, let's start with question number 1. In which competition did Best score 6 goals against the opposition team? Pete, you mentioned it earlier on. Who was it and what team?
Northampton. And it was in the FA Cup.
It was the FA Cup. No, did you get that?
Yeah, I got that one.
Brilliant. 1-1. Question number 2. Best beat which fellow United mate to the Ballon d'Or in 1968? Niall.
Bobby Charlton.
It was Bobby Charlton. Did you get that, Pete?
Yes, Bobby Charlton. Yeah.
Of course you did. Of course you did. Question number 3. Which club did Best join after United? I'm after the official club, not on loan. Pete.
Well, it's a good question, that, because he did have more clubs than some famous golfers. But I'll say Fulham.
No.
It was either Fulham or LA Aztecs. LA, I'll go with.
His first official club after United, I believe 1975, was Stockport. How did you get that?
Yeah,
Stockport.
he did. Yeah. Well, he's Stockport.
Stockport, yeah.
I think you know.
There were 2 before on loan.
Yeah. You know, I think he played for Stockport for a short time, and he only played in the home matches, and it's so he could get to his nightclub that night. True. I think that's true, fairly true. There's a lot of myths about Georgie Best, but I think that one's true.
I reckon. Right, let's move on to question. Sorry, sir.
It's it's fine. Sorry.
Sorry, mate. I didn't know what you said. I couldn't hear you. Question number 4. Let's move on then. Is it 2 at the moment? Yeah, 2 at the moment. Who was we playing in the European Cup final? No.
Benfica.
Yeah, you got that as well, didn't you, Pete?
Yeah, Benfica. Yeah.
Yeah. 3-3. Question number 5. Why did George Best wear the number 9 shirt just once? No, we'll come to you first.
I don't know this one. I'll probably be a bit surprised afterwards. Probably because someone else's jersey. Back in the day, they only had 13 shirts. I don't know. Just randomly, okay. I don't know, because the number 7 was his favourite number.
Okay. Let's come to you, Pete. Why did he wear that number 9 shirt just once?
Blimey, it's a good question, Ben. I thought I knew most of the things about Bestie, or I'd read about him. So I don't really know the answer, so I'm just going to have a bit of a wild guess. Was it in Dennis Law's testimonial against Ajax in 73?
The reason why Best wore the number 9 shirt just once, and it's a really simple answer, by the way. Basically, back in the day, Pete, positions were assigned shirt numbers. So if you played out on the wing, you get the number 7. If you played inside, of course, Charlton wore number 9 because he was the main striker, right, Pete?
Yeah.
Well, Best had to play up front one game because Charlton was injured, so he wore the number 9 shirt. It was because Charlton was injured. It's that simple.
Right, okay.
Very good.
Yeah, so he wore the number 9 shirt just once because Charlton was injured. A little bit of a trick question, but it made your brain think.
Well, that's it. It has.
A good one, though. There we go, then. The quiz is over, and it's 3-3. Well done, guys. It's a draw. It's a fair draw, so we'll leave it at that. Noel, Pete, thank you so much for coming on. I've loved talking about Best. Have you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, and great to talk to you guys. Been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
What about you, Pete?
You loved it.
Of course, your hero and many others. If you've got any best memories, or you want to tell us if you got the quiz answers right, especially number 5, make sure you tweet us at United View. And if you don't show me it down on paper, I won't believe you. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another 12 Greats of Christmas. For now, subscribe, tweet us at United View, and join us in celebrating the legend that is George Best. Goodbye.